What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Today, we're hoping to dispel some preconceived notions about hospice and palliative care services. This topic is not just for the elderly or those with a terminal diagnosis. Stay with us to get an inside look at what these services really are, how they work, and who is eligible to receive them. It's more than you think. We'll be right back.
I used to think healthcare was all the same until I discovered Pace at home. Now I can come to a place to stay active, see the doctor, or just enjoy a meal with my friends. Plus, having a team of people that help me make sense of my options gives me the support I need to stay in charge of my own health. It's been life-changing.
With Pace at Home, we offer a unique lineup of personalized care and a caring staff that feels like family, all under one roof. Call today and discover a community of caring delivered at your own pace.
Welcome. I'm your host, Karen Summey, with ACAP Community and an active family caregiver. If you're listening to our live broadcast, today is Friday, October 3, 2025, at 12 noon Eastern Time. We're delighted to have you with us. Both my guest and I are live in the chat panel as you watch the show we recorded for you recently. We're standing by to take your questions and comments during the broadcast. To join in the discussion, simply sign in to your own YouTube or Google account to access the chat panel in YouTube. You'll find it to the right of your video screen. If you're listening to our replay, you can also sign in and leave comments below your video screen, and we'll get back to you as needed. Our guest today is Ms. Julie Packer. Julie is Director of Professional Relations and a 30-plus year employee at Carolina Caring, a provider of hospice care, palliative medicine, and a variety of special services over a 12-county area in the North Carolina foothills. She's also a registered nurse with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree from UNC Chapel Hill and a Master of Science in Nursing degree from Duke University. She spent most of her nursing career focused on end-of-life care, from the patient's bedside to management to community educational outreach. She's an expert speaker on a variety of topics related to programs offered by ACAP for caregivers and their loved ones. And finally, Julie is a member of the leadership team for ACAP Hickory Foothills in Newton, North Carolina. Julie, welcome to First Fridays with ACAP. We're so happy to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. We have a very important discussion today, and I know that most people have a passing knowledge of hospice and what it does, but I doubt that most of us know real specifics about it, and I'm guessing that there are some major differences in those two services, so I'd like to start with what those are and take a deep dive to understand how both of them work, who's eligible, who pays for them, and what services are available. So let's start off with a broad definition of the two programs and give our audience a sense of what they are.
Thank you. And I appreciate being here today. This is something that we need to share every day because people just don't seem to call on our services until sometimes it's very, very late in the game and necessary and needed. And we want to get the word out earlier to increase access and support for patients and families.
Absolutely.
In its broadest sense, hospice is a home-based program, and it's a service that was designed to utilize a whole body approach, a whole person approach, including body, mind, spirit, emotions, finances, everything that makes us up. And also supporting not only the patient but the family as they face a serious illness and move towards the end of life. We are looking at patients who are shifting their focus and redirecting their care from a treatment plan that's oriented towards length of life or quantity of life towards quality of life and comfort measures. And generally that means comfort in the familiar surroundings of home. Most programs do have access to other settings if and when a person can't stay there. We're very privileged in our area here to have 3 hospice houses as part of our programming, as well as relationships with a great deal a great number of hospitals in the area and facilities. And when you compare that to palliative care, we're looking at a program with palliative medicine that is a program, not the type of care necessarily. It's a combination of comfort measures given in a very specific program setting called palliative medicine, which is a medical consultation service, a program directed by a medical director and a physician nurse practitioner team, including a team approach as well. At our program, we have nursing, chaplaincy, as well as social work support for people upstream earlier on than when they're ready for hospice. And that may be as early as diagnosis. That service is sort of came out of the fact that we've become such good experts at symptom management and hospice care that we felt like we needed to share it sooner. It shouldn't be limited to just those people in the last months of life. Right. It should be used long before. And so that's made available in a variety of settings too. Home, in our case, we're also seeing patients in the clinic setting, just like a doctor's office, in the hospital, and in a facility.
So then, is a terminal diagnosis required for one or both of those services?
Hospice generally has been for those at the end of life. And when we say that, we define that in terms of months, not hours, not days, although we're there and always have been for people who come to us late in the game. But we try to get the word out that we're available so much sooner. So yes, a life-limiting illness with a life expectancy, by our regulations under Medicare, it's a life expectancy of 6 months or less if the disease runs its normal course. For palliative medicine, there's not that heavy restriction by Medicare. There's actually no restriction except for what the programming personally sets. And in our program, we see people as early as the diagnosis of a chronic or serious progressive illness, and that can be years before their end of life.
Wow.
Sometimes they choose us early on to understand their disease process and move forward with a better control of it and sense of what direction to take, because they tap that service early.
Wonderful. Thank you for that clarification. To keep the two services separate, let's address them one at a time. Let's start with hospice care, and then we'll turn to the palliative medicine for the deeper dive. You've mentioned that hospice care is a whole-person approach to end-of-life care, which focuses on the best ways to provide care to dying patients and their caregivers. And the program is intended to serve people with life-limiting illness. So who are the staff who provide hospice services, and where is that care delivered?
So we refer to that staff as the interdisciplinary team. And that is a group of professionals that is broad. It's not just clinically trained professionals like registered nursing and physicians. It includes volunteers. So that team starts out with an assessment of the patient, primarily by an assessment nurse or registered nurse, who then reports back to the medical director the findings that she notes in the setting that she assesses the patient in. And at that point, there's some discussion about eligibility to determine the patient's appropriateness for care, and also to determine the services that they need. And that would be also a discussion that she has or he has with the patient and family caregiver, and from what they assess in the home. That team also includes social work, and generally every patient has generally a nurse and a social worker as a basic team, along with their primary physician in the community, who gives us the initial order, as well as our medical director. So that's a 3-person team to start. And then we add a variety of disciplines based on the individual needs of the patient. So, for example, if they do have companionship concerns, the wife is really concerned, or spouse, that the patient's friends aren't coming around anymore, they're getting tired, that would be a great job for that volunteer I mentioned. If there's spiritual issues, and they can be not specifically religious, they can be just broad, trying to kind of review, do a life review, looking for life's affirmations. Then we could bring in a chaplain who is non-denominational and can approach the patient wherever they are from their spiritual background. Sometimes that also incorporates their own faith community in the process. That team also can include counseling from that social worker, or even more sophisticated counseling if there's some issues that are beyond the social worker's capability. I don't want to leave anybody out here, but that team can also include a rehab focus, and that doesn't happen as often, but it's usually quality of life based, and that includes PT, OT, or ST, physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, the focus being quality of life, safety and transfers. It might be helping that patient, that loved one's family, learn how to transfer that patient safely so they can go out into the garden one more time, rather than trying to get them up and walking a long distance down the hall when we know that that's maybe not possible. Speech may be trying to help an ALS person communicate when they've lost their speech. How do they get their messages across? OT, how to best preserve their energy when they're trying to go about activities of daily living to maximize their quality of life. So all of those things come into play. And the team is individualized by the patient's needs.
Well, that sounds like a tremendous amount of support. And, we all know how expensive medical services can be. So tell us how hospice care is funded and whether Medicare and most insurance covers those services.
We all started out historically, and our program is 46 years old this year, as volunteer hand-holding organizations, by and large, across the nation. Some of us diverted and became parts of home health agencies. Others are departments in hospitals or parts of bigger healthcare systems. But by and large, we have started out as looking for funding from wherever it can come. And that may be from fundraising and simply, direct charitable solicitation. But over time, we have been able to be recognized by our federal system, our healthcare system, and we do receive reimbursement through Medicare and on the state level, Medicaid. Also, following suit, most primary insurance companies and commercial insurance companies follow and give us reimbursement as well. We call that service under Medicare the Hospice Medicare benefit, under Medicaid the Hospice Medicaid benefit. And surprisingly, and I can vouch for this personally with the care of my father, the expenses a family incurs that are so, mounting and so concerning before hospice care go simply to zero when they're enrolled in our program. And you can see that on every explanation of benefits form that comes your way after the patient's admitted. And that includes, the expense of medications related to the patient's illness for which we see them. Those medications are paid for under their hospice benefits. So Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance, veterans benefits, charitable donations, fundraising, however we can get that money to be able to give the patients what they need.
All right. Well, and I have some personal experience with that myself because my father was with hospice for a short time.
Now, reimbursement for palliative care is different. The program that we have is a medical consultation service. So we have a team approach, but it's basically a medical visit in the home by a nurse practitioner or a physician, and therefore it is billed as such, which is Medicare Part B. Hospice is Medicare Part A. So it's feasible that a patient in a nursing home, for example, which is being reimbursed by Medicare Part A skilled nursing facility benefits, can also have a palliative consult there because it's billable to Medicare Part B. We just happen to be on wheels, making a home visit. It's an old-fashioned home visit in the facility setting, which is that patient's home at the time, or in a clinic setting, like a doctor's office, or we go directly to their door in their home, and that's billable Medicare Part B.
Okay. Nice to know. Okay, well, I'm sure there's a lot more we could say about hospice, but I want to turn our attention over to palliative medicine now, because most people aren't as familiar with it as they are with hospice, or their perception may be that they're not as familiar. So first, tell us what the word palliative means and what are the distinct differences between palliative medicine and hospice.
Okay. So palliative is a Latin word, which means to cloak or conceal. But these days, we use it to describe comfort care. And it can be used as an adjective or a noun, and that is confusing. We refer to our program, the noun, as palliative medicine, a consult service. But you'll hear other programs call their palliative program a palliative care program. It can get confusing because palliative can also be used as an adjective to describe the type of care that is rendered, that's provided, meaning comfort care, which can be confusing because palliative care programs provide palliative care and hospice programs do as well. But we're talking about the noun when we refer to programming. Right. So for the audience out there, if you're inquiring in your community about whether you have a palliative care program, use that word program. That differentiates for example, home health agency saying that they provide palliative care, because they do if they're providing comfort care. But do they have a program? It's very specifically delineated, defined program. The noun.
And just for clarity, you work for Carolina Caring here in Newton, North Carolina, but there are many hospice and palliative care organizations across the country. Are they all the same? What do they do?
Yeah, so hospice tends to ride on the familiarity of that hospice benefit, which gives us a base of regulations that we all have to follow in order to receive reimbursement. So anyone who is receiving Medicare funding looks the same in terms of the delivery of care. But palliative care can vary from program to program, even just down the street. So it's very important, again, for the audience to inquire, how do you define your palliative program? What services do you offer? How often do you come to the home? Who comes to the home? Do you have a team or just a nurse practitioner or medical director that makes visits? Is it delivered in the home or just at the hospital? So it's variable based on the programming.
So those are really good questions for people to ask when they start to explore these services. So are hospice and palliative care organizations geographically based, or can they pop up anywhere? How does that work?
So hospices in North Carolina have to be licensed, and they also have to meet the requirements in our state for what's called a certificate of need. We have to prove the need in the region that we want to serve. Some other states don't have that, and that is a requirement here. There is not that similar formatting for palliative care and palliative medicine programs. So you're going to find probably, for example, in our state, fewer palliative programming that's attached to I don't know how best to say this. Hospices are going to be more regulated. Palliative programs are not. But because they're not, and because the concept is relatively new, you're going to probably have fewer palliative medicine programs in and around that serve. And in fact, in some rural areas across the country, I hate to think of this, but they may not be available at all. They were established primarily initially in the hospital setting. So that service you could inquire if you're from a rural area, if there is a palliative program or palliative type outreach service through the hospital that you see or go to. There may be some support groups, for example, but they may be really dedicated just to the hospital. Our program here is all-inclusive. So we might start seeing a patient in the hospital setting. One of the hospitals in our immediate area, we provide the staff for. The other hospital provides their own palliative provider. And then on discharge, whether they're going home or to a facility, we can then follow them with a doctor's order and continue to see them in the home. Likewise, we can also start services in the home setting if they're calling, if we get a call from a family member who needs us to start seeing them there. It's
good.
Formatting is very distinctive and different depending on where you are. And I hope it's accessible to everyone who's listening.
Right. So the bottom line is each person needs to look at what's available in their own community and start with healthcare providers and ask those questions to see whether or not the services are available or not.
Yeah, and I left out one thing that's important. If there's a tertiary teaching hospital in your neck of the woods or in your area, they may have a dedicated palliative care unit and palliative care team inside that hospital that rotates around and is available for consults in the hospital, just like we provide in the home. So that's a service you can ask for as well.
That's wonderful. All right, so we talked about the hospice medical team or the care team. So tell us about the palliative medicine team and in what ways they assist their clients.
All right, so we can get a call from anyone for palliative medicine, as is the same for hospice. What we then do is we call the physician, find out who the primary physician is for that client, and get permission to go. And that's a doctor's order. He or she is allowing us to make that contact. And that initial visit may be a telehealth visit or a phone call just to, introduce ourselves and arrange for the first scheduled visit. And then our nurse practitioners are assigned. So our palliative program specifically is overseen by a medical director, and we have then a geographic team of nurse practitioners that go out like spokes of the wheel geographically from our hub, from our main office, to serve in the home setting or in the area where the patient lives.
Okay.
And then we can then combine the other services like hospice as needed. And we may find that after just initial couple of visits that we need to, I don't want to say put the patient on hold, but clinically evaluate them less frequently because we've gotten the symptom that they called about under control. And then we'll make some very regular, continuous contacts with them by phone, and then step up our game and go back out and make home visits if need be. Now, what are some of the reasons? I actually wrote some down here.
Great.
If you are a client that is frequently, seeing your loved one go to the emergency department, or there's been really repeated, frequent hospitalizations for symptoms that seem to be uncontrolled or recurring, that would be a great person for our palliative program. A progressive condition of any kind, there's no limit. It can be organ failure. It could be diseases that are incurable and progressive, like I mentioned, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, or combined comorbidities, we call it, which is basically a combination of illnesses that really are combining to really, put a burden on that patient, that client. If you see a decline in that person physically, with less activity, functional limitations, less intake, feeding difficulties, and obvious weight loss, that's a person to be concerned about. We could see you and help you. If you have concerns and the patient has concerns about their future care, the goals that they have, are they having to kind of shift their mindset based on the symptom burden that they're facing? If they want to get their advanced directives completed and do some planning ahead of time, that's a reason. If we see a patient, sometimes we're consulted to go into the intensive care unit at the hospital to talk with family about extubation, removing life support, taking the time to really have those heavy, very emotional conversations that the hospital-based physicians don't have time for, or they don't have enough time for. They try to make as much time for. We can help with that. And then we also follow that patient and family through that process, which is very, burdensome and emotional and needs a lot. It's a time for support. Help with symptom management is our expertise, and that could be symptoms from treatments or the condition itself: pain, nausea, vomiting, difficulty breathing, agitation, depression, delirium. If that person is very hospice eligible, but for whatever reason they're in denial or they're just wanting to continue down the path of aggressive treatment, but they are seeing some changes that are really burdening them physically, symptom-wise, we can make a difference there. We can also talk about their goals for care, as I mentioned earlier. And my goodness, navigating the healthcare system, it is just so confusing.
Yes, absolutely.
There's so many specialists out there that maybe just haven't had the time to communicate, and we can be, pulling those people together and communicating information to help that patient and family understand what's going on and get through the paperwork and
and
muddle through.
that is such a complex thing to do that we actually are. We have just added coordination of care to our regular ACAP program list because we just know that that's a real problem for a lot of people.
And along the way, I think two huge things are the gift of time. We're able to really spend time with the patient family when the other disciplines are so busy in the traditional hospital setting. The second thing is really using our expertise and maximizing the patient's comfort. And that's earlier on than hospice care for palliative all the way through the end of life.
Right.
So those are some of the most common things we see people for.
Oh, well, that is more than I ever dreamed of, really. There's a term that I've heard, and I would love for you to just explain that a little bit. And I think I have an inkling about what it is, but I'll let you define it. And that's concurrent care. What is that, and how does that work?
So, again, you talked about differences, vast differences between the two programs. That is one that is distinctively defines palliative medicine over hospice. So palliative medicine patients, clients, are ones who may be earlier on in their disease process, may still be getting active treatment for their condition, and that is treatment concurrently with support. So we're able to partner alongside their traditional physician who is treating them, an oncologist with, a specific chemotherapy regimen, or a cardiologist who has plans for treatment of that specific heart condition, and provide that supportive care to patients and families while they're seeking that. That's concurrent treatment. Now, we also are blessed, and this is a whole nother subject, to be able to offer these services to children, and we have a program called Cardinal Kids. That entire program encompasses palliative care and hospice in a combination, because that we know parents just simply, it's just too difficult to stop treatment, and their one last hope is that treatment can bring another day, another memory, another moment with their loved one, with their child. And those kids are getting concurrent treatment while they're also getting supportive care and expert symptom management and all the care that we can give them through our palliative services and eventually through our hospice program as they decline. Right. And they may enter the hospice program still thinking, if things change, I'm going to go back to treatment. We get that. Oftentimes they can't, but if they can, we'll be all over trying to help them get there.
I expect that the largest part of our audience has no idea that there are services for children as well, so that is very good to know. I appreciate you bringing that up. And how is palliative medicine reimbursed? Because we know about hospice, but how is palliative medicine paid for?
So I said earlier that by and large, primarily the clientele we serve are over 65 and older, and their Medicare B, Part B, pays for it. Now, if they're younger, and they may have also secondary coverage, it may be their primary insurance, and we will clear that with the insurance. If there is a copayment, we're going to make sure that the family knows what that responsibility is before they accept care, and seek further coverage if there's very limited services. We're very creative initially on the front end before we accept a patient to kind of seek revision, if you will, of their insurance coverage and lifetime maximum and turn it into palliative medicine if that's what they truly need. And sometimes that can save the insurance company money and give the patient family what they're asking for at the same time. Okay. That's very individualized too. It varies depending on the insurance company.
Right.
Yeah. Now, those covered under Advantage plans under Medicare need to know right now they still have their hospice benefits. And this is for hospice now. They still have their hospice benefit waiting there if they need it. And if and when they become eligible and want hospice, they come out of their Advantage plan and go into traditional hospice benefits. And they get the complete program of care under hospice Medicare or Medicaid in our state.
So then they're required to change their insurance? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's streamlined to them. They don't see any switches. For us, they're simply opting out of their Medicare Advantage and they're opting into the hospice benefit. And that would be by signing our certification forms and eligibility forms that we offer at the very outset of care under hospice.
Okay. Interesting.
And that's, again, going to be explained to them. There's not going to be any financial responsibility on their part because our visits that we make are covered at 100%. We don't charge any copay for medications or equipment under hospice, which we do cover, related to that illness for which they're referred. So they're going to see zero, and it's going to be streamlined for them.
Okay. Well, all of that is very informative, and I appreciate it. What else would you like to tell us about either of these programs, hospice and palliative medicine, before we come to a close?
I think the one thing that I've been able to observe, because I started in this work before palliative medicine, is the beauty of the continuum that allows us to meet the patient where they are earlier on, move them through a supportive network into hospice care sooner, because we are educating them along the way, and they're learning that hospice isn't as scary as what they might think. There are so many benefits that they can get that service sooner and access all the benefits earlier that can provide for a more peaceful end-of-life situation for that patient family. And if along that journey they have some period of stability and they've already entered hospice, we can move them backwards into palliative, palliative medicine, and put their hospice on hold, have them go back into palliative medicine and be followed, and so that we don't lose them. It's a safety net. We don't lose them to follow up. It assures them that someone's going to be calling and checking on them. Our program has 24-hour, round-the-clock, on-call availability under palliative and hospice. Some palliative programs do not. They work like a clinic, 8 to 5. Ours does, so families can utilize that either way. And so we fit the program to the patient's needs. Mm-hmm. It's not having the patient fit the program, it's fitting the program, choosing the program that's best for them.
It is always good to know there are options.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I truly had no idea about so many of the things that you have talked about, and you've given us all a lot to think about. I suppose that personally I've always been a little bit hesitant to learn more about mm-hmm. hospice and palliative medicine because I had a lot of preconceived notions about it, and I assumed that people had to be nearing the end of their life just to qualify or seek out the services. So it's good to know that it is more than that. And we want to thank you for dispelling the notions, both for me and for the audience that we have today. And Julie, I want to thank you for joining us today. I know that you're so busy, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank you, our viewers and listeners. Hopefully you've gained a better understanding about hospice and palliative care or palliative medicine services and the differences between them. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to click the like button below your video screen. If you'd like to hear more of our broadcast, click the subscribe button as well. And please keep in mind that you can share today's podcast with family and friends by clicking the share button. We also want to say thank you to Senior TLC, formerly known as Pace at Home in Newton, North Carolina, for sponsoring all of our Caregiver Community podcasts, and to Every Age, our sustaining partner. Please join us again on Friday, November 7 for our next episode. We have a very special treat for you as we approach the holiday season. You can view the replay of today's program through our website at www.acapcommunity.org or find the audio podcast as part of the Mesh network of online shows and podcasts. You'll find us on any platform where you listen to podcasts, as well as on our website. Finally, we have a rapidly growing number of local community chapters offering in-person monthly programs. You can find more information on that on our website as well. Until next time, be well. Bye for now.